We'd like to welcome each and every individual to Voices of Integrity podcast with young men. This isn't just for young men. Young women benefit from it. Shoot, I know you guys all probably think I'm in my 20s. I'm not. I mean, I get it, but I'm not in my 20s. So older men is good for. And we're doing a part two. Lamar kind of, struck a chord and we were talking about friendship and a whole bunch of things like wow part one really went crazy, and then we got into overthinking, and then we said, boy, we got to do a part two on the overthinking. And then Shuaib joined us and he has a book. What's the book title, Shuaib?
Its title is How to Stop Overthinking, and it is written by Chase Hill and Scott Sharp.
Mhm.
Who's the author?
Name is Chase Hill and Scott Sharp.
Gotcha. And why did you get that book, Shuaib?
In fact, uh, just to read, if there is some scenario that you feel you are overthinking about a specific thing, how you can hold yourself and avoid overthinking to a specific topic. So then the title is A Proven Guide to Overcome uh, Procrastination, Cure Laziness, Perfectionism using simple 5-minute practice. So I thought it might be helpful. So there was a bundle of books related to this topic. The other one was The Physiology of Money, and one is The Atomic Habits.
I've heard of that one. Yeah.
Yep.
So have I.
And,
Yeah, I've
and
heard of
the
that one. It's
Yep.
interesting to me on how they go ahead and connect laziness with overthinking. Like,
Yep.
like that makes a lot of sense there.
Mhm.
Stream, if you could take a picture of the book and the table of contents, maybe that, and then email that over to me. There's a project I'm working on, and it's Addicted to Lazy.
Yep. Sure, I will send. And the main title was The Seven-Step Plan to Control and Eliminate Negative Thoughts and Start Thinking Positively in 5 minutes or less. So that was the main description behind
Nice.
the title.
So what is the I think you're connecting the dots for the blank and the blank this year. What is the connection between overthinking and laziness?
What people do is they don't want to do something.
Okay.
And why don't they want to do it? So in this model here, I just ran by this model and I don't know if I can find it. So, yeah. Oh,
I
yeah,
can
here it is.
explain it. Mm.
So here it is, the 5 reasons people don't do things. Lack education, the head. So they just don't know. Like they're ignorant. Ignorant is not knowing what to do. Stupid is not doing what we know. Like, that took me 61 years to figure that out. Like, really, you're not that smart, Mark. No kidding. And then lack passion or vision. So that's the hope or the heart. It's not having courage or lack discipline. That's the hands. They're not teachable, or walls of opportunity. So this one was done 2007. So what was that? You know, 18 years ago. 18 years ago, I was working on this one. And then why people give up? Like why do people give up? Like,
Mhm.
oh, Lamar, what has been your discovery on overthinking things? Like, why do people overthink things from your perspective?
Kind of what you were saying. I think people overthink things when, oh, you know, well, the part with the laziness and overthinking is to to not be an overthinker is to take action on your thoughts. If that wisdom, thinking with wisdom is thinking and then taking action and doing something about it. So I think,
And it's weird. It's weird because that's what Mel, owner of Bluegate, said. He's funny. He's just funny. He and Alvin are just they're freaking like they don't even know it. Like they
mhm,
say something brilliant. I'm like, that's brilliant. They're like, it's just common sense, Mark. I'm like, well, might be for you, but that's
yeah,
what Mel was saying yesterday. So the problem is people don't take action. I was actually thinking about you this morning, Luke, on that.
Okay.
um, yeah, and and then you talk about in that list here, it says not teachable or lack of discipline. The not teachable thing is another thing that obviously comes with overthinking. When you overthink, you always think that the way that you're thinking about it is the best way, that you know how it's done, and you're kind of set on your own ways. But that's the furthest thing from the truth, is that we know everything. It's um, God knows everything. And if you take, let's say there's in this world, there's how many successful people are out there with millions and billions of dollars, and the thing that separates us from them is what they know and what we know. They know something that we don't know. Well, if we're not teachable, how are we going to grow in every aspect of our life? Relationships and business and sales and everything that we do. Um, so I like to, it's the same with spirituality. We talk about the Bible and what the Bible says. Well, yeah, we might think we're right about what we're talking about, but how do we really know we're right? It's always we always need to have that part in us that's like we could be wrong about this.
See, this is just
But
magic. Like people don't get it, especially in the
hmm
circles I grew up in as conservative Baptists. It's like I understand the Bible. It's like, do you? Like, what are you
yeah,
saying? I understand
mhm,
God. Do you really like how can you understand an infinite being like the creator of it? How do you understand
yeah,
that?
yeah, yeah. It's like let's say you take this circle. Let's say it's a 100-mile radius circle, and that's what God knows. And you take yourself and apply yourself to that 100-mile radius circle, you're a pin dot in that circle. So for us as humans to think that we know everything, and that to think we're always right about everything is is it's not a good mindset to have, because if we change that mindset, being teachable from others, we need to learn from others that have done better than us, that have been more successful than us, that are doing what we want to do. If you want to go into business, you need to surround yourself or listen to people that have already done what you want to do. So there's and I think the way to overcome overthinking is you need to face yourself alone. You need to get alone in your own mind, in your own being, and face your thoughts um, by yourself, basically, and allow. Yeah, it's a whole. It takes a lot of training from yourself to teach yourself all these things, and it's not easy, and it takes a lot of time, but it's worth it.
And
So
it's intriguing to me. Like I resonate. Like I've never heard somebody that's like is passionate about capturing, every thought. Like is Lamar, like I feel connected to him. I feel like at a level 4 with him right now. I'm like, oh my gracious, that's the same thing like I've been thinking. Like it's like it's almost like words can't even describe. Like he's got it. Like he understands. And I would take it even a step further. And yes, we need to study people who have been successful, but I think you can learn as much or more about business by studying people or listening to people who haven't been successful, because there's so many elements to success. And
Yep.
and so like you can learn more from a child. Like when I went ahead and Jim Rohn, who's the father of all motivation. He's Zig Ziglar, so he goes back, and this guy's just brilliant. I mean, just absolutely brilliant. If you can ever read his books or listen to his stuff. And he said, I don't know how to motivate people, so I find motivated people. And it was soon after he died, and I was talking to a client and coaching a client on Action Vision, and he said, Mark, how do I get my employees to be motivated? And he said, Jim Rohn said, I don't know how to go ahead and motivate people, so I find motivated people. I said, I wish he was still alive. I wish I could ask him a couple questions. And the client said, what questions would you ask him? And he said, and I said, well, I'd ask him, like, what if one of those unmotivated people are one of your own children? Like, you can't just go out and get another one. like, I mean, you can, but you still have that child that's unmotivated. So you can't dismiss your own children. I don't think that's an option. Like, okay. And I said, the other is, what if your life vision is so big, there's not enough motivated people out there? So I set out on a journey to figure the secrets of how to motivate people.
Mm-hmm.
And that was revealed to me actually by a 7-year-old girl. So I know a lot of really smart people. I mean, my gracious, the people around me, I'm like, man, I don't feel very smart. These guys are just, anyways, I'm asking all these smart people, like, what's the secrets? And nobody knows the secret. Well, nobody knows. So I'm talking to my 2 nieces, Olivia and Brianna, who are 5 and 7 years old. And I'm writing a book with them, co-authoring a book. So I meet them every Saturday. And I'd be like, and we'd, talk and then write a chapter in a book. And I said, hey, girls, Uncle Mark's trying to figure out the secret to motivating people. And I don't know that you know Jim Rohn, but he says, so Jim Rohn, the guy's brilliant. He's the father of motivation. He says he doesn't know how to do it, so he finds it. So I say, so do you girls have any thoughts on, they're 5 and 7 years old. And Brienne, bless her heart, she's like, well, Uncle Mark, like I'm an idiot. Like it was so cute. She's like, well, Uncle Mark, what they do to motivate us in Girl Scout to sell cookies is they tell us stories. I'm like, are you kidding? Like she was able to cut through, because that's what Jim Rohn did. That's what Jesus did. That's what all the great teachers do. The great teachers all go ahead and tell stories. But Jim Rohn didn't. He knew how to motivate people. He just didn't know how to communicate. He didn't know the science. He didn't understand. But think about a 7-year-old girl. So she had to first know what the word motivation meant, which is pretty good for a 7-year-old. Then she had to go ahead and she had to think, when was I motivated? And then she had to think, okay, it was selling Girl Scouts. So she didn't want to sell Girl Scout cookies, but she did it. And then she had to look and say, so how did they motivate us? And they had testimonies of other little girls who sold cookies. And she processed all of that instantly. Mm-hmm. This is why I love my grandkids. Like kids. And so I think one of the mistakes that people make is people look at money to success and they say, I can learn something from somebody who makes money. You can't. You can learn just as much in different areas from people who don't. What about people who have had successful marriages? You can learn from that, but people who haven't, like you can learn from anyone anytime as long as you're a good teacher. Like my mind is just exploding. Like in the, some of you have gone through The Secret About Time. I don't know if Lamar knows about it or not, but if you haven't, they're starting one. I don't know if it's tomorrow or Monday, but it's the 30-day challenge about The Secret About Time. So I own 9 companies and I have an extra 20 or 30 hours of free time a week. And if somebody says, how do you do that? It's how I think. It's how I think. So these are 10 videos that years ago that Life Masteries Institute asked me to go ahead and put together. And so, it's how I think about time. And so it's, you want a bunch of time in your life, you want free time, go through this because it's 10 minutes a day, 7 minutes to watch a video, 4 minutes or 6 minutes to watch a video, 4 minutes to go ahead and share with other people. And then I think about the white paper library and about like when you look at the white paper library, it's all about thinking. Like it's so that the first is here. The first is designed to eliminate self-righteousness. What's in it for me? The concept of selfless selfishness. So people think they're doing things because they're good people, self-right. No, you're not. You're doing it out of selfish. And it's okay. God created us to be selfish. There's good selfish, bad selfish. So just acknowledge you're selfish. So how can I go ahead, with my wife, how can I go ahead and make sure my selfishness is working good for her and for me? And so a lot of people, they think they're really good. They're really caring. You're really not. And that gets people in all kinds of trouble. People think they're consistent and committed. They're not. I mean, they are, but not to. You want more success in life. You want more success as a business owner. You want more success as a dad. You want more success as a boyfriend, as a man in your relationship spiritually. You learn how to take it to the next dimension of consistent and committed. You think you're driven and disciplined, it's because of the pond you swim in. Swim in a bigger pond, you'll realize you're not that big of a fish. You're not nearly as disciplined and driven as you think. And clear communication, my gracious. And vaporization, like be hard on yourself. And then this one here, that's what triggered it. Alan Stein, a friend of mine on the East Coast, they build $1 million conservatories for very wealthy people all around the world. And he asked me once, he said, Mark, how do I learn to become a student like you? I said, write a book, because my international speaking author, she went ahead and said, Mark, you don't write a book to bestow your wisdom on other people. You write a book to gain deep wisdom on a particular topic. Like, well, that's pretty cool. I said, write a book on how to be the best student in the world. He's like, okay, I will. And he said, how do I do that? I said, find 4 young children and have them co-author. So my 12-year-old grandson, when he was 5 years old, he helped co-author this book. I said, like, Alan, don't study me. Don't study me. Study the kids, because the kids, that's who I study. The kids are so curious and they ask so many questions. Wow. Anybody have any thoughts for Lamar on part 2 on why people overthink things? They're speechless, Lamar.
I have something I'd like to add is, when we're studying and trying to obviously grow our life, this book that Shoaib, is that pronounced right?
Yeah, Shoaib, yeah.
Shoaib, the book that he has, and it goes with, reading reading your Bible or whatever book you may be reading, when you're trying to learn something, and if you're a reader, I'm not much of a reader. So when I do read, it's always something I'm very interested in because I don't care for. To me, it's almost a waste of time because I'm so much of I just think my way out of things basically. Um, it's not a waste of time, but we read books and we're trying to grow who we are, learning about new things. Um, if we read if we're trying to read something, we're trying to get something out of that. And if we read through this whole chapter or section and we don't stop to look up the words that we don't understand, we're just as stupid as we were before. If those words that you typically don't understand are the ones that are gonna have the most impact on you. So that's just a kind of a valuable lesson that I've learned. And typically, if you come across a word that you might not understand or it's kind of interesting to you, and you actually start looking into just this one word can lead into so many different things, and it can teach you so much. So that to me, that's an important part of growth is always, taking time to actually look into the small details of things. It's the same with overthinking. Training your mind. You need to think in a way that you're kind of focusing on the smaller things rather than the big picture, because the smaller steps are always what lead to the bigger outcome. A lot of people, I listen T.D. Jakes Bishop, a pastor that I listen to a lot. He's always saying, or he says that a lot of people want to go from the basement to the presidential suite in one step, and so that's not how it works. God created us to grow in steps, and at every step and every level, it requires something new from you. It's going to require more from you. Every step you take is going to require more from you. And so being willing to put whatever is required of you into that is, what determines how many steps you take. And God allows us between steps, and during the process, God will allow us to have a break in between to kind of just meditate on where we're at, and kind of just everything you've learned and all the growth you've gone through, just to kind of understand all that before you go to the next step, basically. So it's, overthinking, and, trying to be a thinker with wisdom. It requires steps to be taken. So that's an important part, not to just, go into something, think this is the result that I'm going to get, because you might go into, it's good to have goals and visions of what the result might be, but that result's always going to, for the most part, that result's always going to look different than what you expected, because of the process that it took to get there. Doesn't always work out the way we think it does. So
here's a good assignment for everybody. One is look up these words. It's from a Thomas Jefferson education. It gives the history of the American educational system. And I'm telling you, this book, it'll wake you up in ways that, it's crazy. So the Harvard Business School of Law, or Harvard School of Law, it says these are the 10 things that are required to be successful in the 21st century. Look up these 3 words. think inductively, deductively, and dialectically. When I read that, I didn't know what any one of those things. There's 3 different ways to think, and each one of them have a benefit and a downside of doing it. I don't like to read either. Most people think I'm a pretty big reader. I do not like to read, which is why if I'm digging into a book, I mean, I might spend 2 or 3 days on one page, because if I'm going to read, if I'm going to do something I don't like doing, I better get a lot of benefit out of it. In Voices of Integrity in Voices of Integrity, you can go to voicesofintegrity.com. I think it's .com. Yeah, voicesofintegrity.com. And then if you go to podcast, and then if you go to the movie book library. So if you're not a reader, and I'd encourage you to read even if you're not, but here are the books and the movies that have, altered how I think. And we've done podcasts on each of these different books. And these are not all the books I've read, but these are the best of the best books that I've read, or movies that I've seen. And I look back, and this was years ago, I said, I wish my kids, because Einstein said you can never solve a problem on the level it was created. What does that mean? It means we create our own problems in our own life based on how we think. So he said, you'll never solve a problem on the level it was created. We're never going to solve a problem based on how we think now, because that's what got us into the problem in the first place. So we have to make a dimensional jump. So again, we won't do a part 3. Well, not now, we won't. Maybe it later. Like this could be a whole section in the podcast, like thinking, like. And so in that one there, be great to talk about the next dimension principle, and how when you go from one dimension to another dimension, you have to learn to think differently, because if you don't, you're going to get smacked down and pushed back in. So if you're a business and you're doing $1 million in sales, the next dimension is 2.5 million. And it can be easier to get to 2.5 million than 1.5 million. Well, that's counterintuitive, but there's a science behind it. But if you're going to get to 2.5 million, you have to learn to think differently, because if you get there and you don't, you can go bankrupt. You can go bankrupt at 2.5 million. At 1 million, you're very profitable. That makes no sense. So there's so many of these things out there. You're like, whoa, like somebody's really thought through this, not overthinking it. See, I think that it's impossible for somebody to overthink. I think what's the problem is people are not overthinking. I think people are thinking about the wrong things. So Lamar and I are saying, I think, the same things. It's like, so if you're thinking about how to get out of work, that's the lazy. If you're thinking about how I don't want to do something, so I'm going to come up with some reason, like the guy in the Bible that said, I'm not going to go out and find work today because a lion may eat me. What? And so our brains and how we think is really powerful. So thanks, Lamar, for being on. If you're listening to the rebroadcast of this, if you have any questions, connect with the individual who invited you to participate in today's session, or you can call toll-free 888-230-2300, outside the U.S. 630-393-9909. And always remember, we can accomplish so much more together than we ever could on our own. Have an amazing day. Bye-bye.